Are you curious about the difference between a therapist and a coach? And maybe curious about which option, therapy or coaching, might be right for you? That's what today's video is all about. I'm going to break down the similarities, the differences, the crossovers, and help you find exactly what option might be best for you, or at least have more familiarity with the differences between coaching and therapy. Welcome, I'm Kim Marie, and this channel is all about supporting women to find the empowered woman within them. And coaching and therapy are both really powerful tools to help you do that. I'll be speaking from my own experience, both having been a coach, been coached, and also having participated in therapy, hired therapists in my own history, and talk about it from the perspective of what I've seen and experienced with many clients and colleagues and friends who have also gone through therapy and coaching, and seeing some of the differences from that perspective. First of all, the similarities. Now, both a coach and a therapist, hopefully, if they're a good coach or therapist, they're going to start with deep listening. The sessions are all about you. It's all about listening to what's going on for you, really tuning in and being able to see things from a more objective perspective. Then there's also the concept of individualized attention, really focusing on your challenge. Now, if you're in a group therapy session or a group coaching situation, then the coach or therapist are going to tune into what's going on for the group, and it's a little bit less individualized. Now, a big piece or goal or mission for therapy and coaching both is that it's a desire to connect you with yourself, to help you know yourself better, tune into yourself, see what's going on for you. It's also around whole wellness, the wellness of your whole being. They want you to do well, do your best, be your best, experience your best life, your greatest potential. So the other piece that many coaches and therapists both can help and support with, and is very similar between the two, is that they often address habit breaking and habit forming practices, helping you to determine what habits are getting in your way and what kinds of new habits you might be able to form. Now, neither coaching nor therapy is supposed to be about giving advice. That's really more consulting. I will say that because a coach or a therapist has a lot of experience, hopefully with their own experience, and maybe that's the reason that they're choosing to be the type of coach or type of therapist they are, they may be able to speak from some of their own experience. So there might be a little bit of mentoring involved in either coaching or therapy, but ideally it's really focused on you and not about giving advice. Both therapy and coaching have a shadow side. There is the concept of the more clinical aspects that can come with therapy, where everything can be a little bit more boxed in because there are diagnoses, and we're going to get into some of the differences. But a good therapist won't fall into this trap, but it does happen. And similarly with a coach can be a little bit too, kind of bypassing the situation. Let's just focus on the positive with, affirmations and getting things done and making things happen without addressing the bigger, more holistic picture. So we want to look at the fact that there is a shadow side to both coaching and therapy. Now, let's talk about some of the differences between coaching and therapy. With therapy, people usually turn to a therapist because there is something that they're deeply challenged by, and it really can often be very much about pathology, right? There's something specifically going on that is causing a lack of wellness, all right? That's not always the case, but that is often where therapy thrives, and it is definitely not what coaching is intended to do. However, coaching is very much about helping you to thrive and express the full expression of who you are. Therapy is more often about pathology, and coaching is really looking more at, okay, what can we do? What kinds of things can we implement in your life to help you to thrive? My experience of therapy has been that it can sometimes feel like I was a problem that needed solving. Now, again, I know I have my biases. That is not true of all therapy, and I think really good therapy does not do that. I've also experienced great therapy where there are a lot of tools and support to helping you find what is going on within you. And Coaching really focuses on the idea that you have the power within you to heal. There's not something wrong with you. You're not a problem that needs solving. There's not a pathology. And similarly with therapy, it can be very symptom focused. What are the symptoms you're experiencing? Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you feeling anxiety? Are you depressed? Are you not eating, etc.? Okay. Whereas coaching can really be more recreation focused. Okay. So you have these things going on in your life. What do you want to create in your life? Not addressing symptoms or trying to heal symptoms or solve problems, although that is often a benefit of coaching. I have had many coaching clients who have symptoms that we didn't even address in the coaching that went away because the coaching went deep and it addressed deeper things and patterns and habits and simple awareness that made a huge difference in their life. Therapy can be very much about diagnosing, whereas coaching is really very much about opening to new possibilities. So there might be this aspect of trying to determine what's wrong, kind of diagnosing it, which I personally find challenging in that it can really end up having you feel like you're kind of stuck in a box or with a label. That was something I personally did not enjoy about therapy. Again, not all therapists will do this, and in fact, good quality therapists will not box you in. They will not focus only on the pathology or the diagnosis. They will focus on helping you to become the best that you can be. This is why there's so much similarity. A coach cannot diagnose and determine, look at symptoms and causality and things like that. They certainly cannot prescribe medication or any of that. But coaches and therapists alike can have different trainings that support them to use added modalities on top of their basic coaching or therapy trainings. But one of the biggest things I always loved about coaching and why I love being a coach is there is so much about opening up to new possibilities, seeing from perspectives you couldn't see from before, being able to find things within yourself that you didn't know were there. Now, that can still happen with therapy. There are a lot of therapists choosing to become coaches and a lot of coaches choosing to become therapists. I want to mention here, therapists are required to be licensed, okay? Coaching can get a bad rap in terms of having this assumption that anybody can call themselves a coach, and technically anybody can. It's not a regulated industry. So the first thing I want to say is if you're trying to choose between a coach and a therapist, definitely make sure the coach that you're working with is trained. What training have they gone through? What type of training? Does it fit the way that you want to work? And in many ways, you can do the same with a therapist, but because the therapy industry is more regulated, you know that they had to get a license even to call themselves a therapist. So at the very least, you know they've gone through training. Many coaches will call themselves a coach, but they've never gone through coach training. My experience of therapy was that it was a lot of talk therapy. I would talk about things that were bothering me. The therapist might ask some questions, but sometimes those questions felt a little bit shallow or a little bit stale, like, well, what do you think about that? Questions from a coach are geared toward helping you see things from your own perspective. I know for me as a coach, that's one of my favorite things is when a client says, oh, I never thought of it that way. That's such a powerful indicator that the questions that you're asking, the ways in which people are starting to connect the dots and make connections within themselves is opening them up to new possibilities, right? And that can happen in therapy. But again, my experience of therapy and many of the clients I've talked to who've chosen coaching over therapy, they will feel that sometimes the therapy questions can be more stale, where the coaching questions can really challenge you, they can really push you to find the best of yourself. I think therapy gets a bad rap because sometimes people think that it's just going on and on and on forever, all these questions that never really get anywhere. And coaching gets a bad rap because anybody can call themselves a coach. These are some of the similarities, that they both have their shadow side, they both can have their difficulties and misunderstandings. But again, this is about asking the questions and really understanding who you're working with and why. Therapy can often be past focused, very focused on the past and looking at, okay, well, what was your mother like? What was your father like? How did that make you feel? What was going on? What were the stories? And sometimes those stories can get repeated a lot. That was my experience. And I've witnessed other people in therapy that are kind of stuck in their story. They're just still repeating the same stories, but no solution is coming out of it. No big changes or shifts are coming out of it. When I see big changes and shifts coming out of therapy, they're coming out because they're working with a therapist who is adding additional modalities, whether it's like cognitive behavioral therapy or EMDR or other types of practices, there's a process of parts work called IFS, internal family systems. Coaches can also have these trainings though, so you don't always know where some of this is going to come from. Coaching is very future focused. Coaches want to focus on, okay, where are you now and where do you want to be? Now, that doesn't mean we don't look at the past, because your past informs the present. It helps us, you and the coach, to understand where you've come from, what's been going on. But the coach is not going to have you rehashing your story and dredging up the past. And in fact, they probably shouldn't in any big ways, because there can be a re-traumatization of things depending upon how they're bringing things up and whether or not they have training to deal with some of the trauma-based things. Coaches can be trauma-based coaches as well. Therapy can sometimes be covered by insurance, and most coaching is not. That may be a consideration for you when it comes to cost. Coaching is often paid for by your company if you are working with a coach for development in your work and your career, and they will often pay for it if you would like to do that. Now, there is a lot of crossover, as you probably are seeing, in between therapy and coaching, and yet there are subtle, distinct differences. What I'm seeing more and more, especially as more coaching comes to awareness for people and more people are getting truly trained as coaches. For example, Jungian analysis used to be a very common training for therapists. I mean, it still is. You can see a Jungian-based therapist. Now there is Jungian-based coach training as well. So a lot of the modalities and the ways of looking at things are starting to be trained in both areas. I think the biggest key is you have to ask yourself, am I dealing with severe trauma, severe emotional difficulties that I cannot function on my own? No coach should be trying to address that without having a therapist also on board. And this is where there's a lot of crossover between coaching and therapy. Many people choose to have a therapist and a coach. The therapist might be the one that they talk to when it comes to regulating their emotional realm and depression and anxiety and things like that. And then the coach can be someone that might help them to, take steps forward and close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Again, being very future focused, whereas the therapist is kind of helping them process the trauma and deal with some of the past history. Both coaching and therapy should ideally be a journey to the soul, a connection to your true self. And both have many myths, right? Some people think coaching is for short-term focus and therapy is for a longer-term processing. Personally, for me, the type of coaching I do, I always tell people it's not about a quick fix or a magic pill. We are going into some shadow work. We are deepening into some of these things that maybe you haven't seen before and noticed before. Not traumas per se, but looking at some of the ways that you think about things, some of the stories that you tell yourself, some of the emotional blocks that happen. That can happen in both. So some clients will coach with someone for many years and some will do it for 6 weeks. And the same kind of thing can happen with therapy. Now, I think the best therapy and best coaching is done over time, when we're really willing to take the time to know ourselves better, to go on that journey, to really connect with our true self in whatever format that's going to be. Many people think that coaching is more about like goals and results, whereas therapy can be more developmental. I personally think you can get both with both. I've had that experience where, I'm able to get a result that I was hoping for, like maybe the result I want is to understand my partner better and communicate with them better. I've gotten that both in therapy and in coaching, okay? Different ways of seeing that understanding, but definitely still getting results. I've also found myself developmentally growing with both therapy and with coaching in terms of looking at where I've been, where I'm going, really understanding who I am, deepening into my psyche and my soul-based world and life, and really knowing myself better and opening up to more possibilities. I really think it can happen with both. And again, I think the biggest piece that determines that has to do with different modalities. There are so many different modalities, and it really depends a lot on the training, the learning, the understanding, the study, etc. that your coach or your therapist has. I think a lot of it is really looking for the experience of both your therapist and your coach to understand what have they worked with, what are they specializing in, what is their unique niche, and is it specific enough to help you? So how do you know which one is right for you? If there are all these crossovers and similarities, what do you choose? First of all, if you're severely depressed, seek therapy, right? The severe depression and anxiety, I think therapy is definitely something worth working with. I personally feel, this is my holistic approach to life, that there are many different ways of addressing that don't require medication. Some people do require medication. I personally work with homeopathy and other things to address some of those mood challenges, and then focus on the therapy and the coaching for talking things through and seeing things differently, rather than choosing for medication specifically. However, if medication is definitely something you feel you need, or you feel your struggle is so deep that that's important, definitely therapy is the way to go for you. If you're seeking more measurable outcomes, more looking at, okay, where am I now? Where do I want to be? And how can I start looking at, how far have I come through these coaching sessions, through this process, through this journey? Coaching may be the right path for you, where it's a little bit more about these measurable outcomes and processes, okay? The other piece is ask how they work, how they specialize. Be sure that you're asking those questions and understanding who you're gonna work with either way. That's gonna be the big thing. Seek referrals, right? If you know someone who's been through similar situations and they say, oh, I know this great therapist, or I know this great coach that helped me get through that, that right there is probably your biggest golden ticket to knowing if you can be helped or not. If a person has had a similar situation and has gotten success from the person that you're considering or given you a referral. Another really big thing that I can't emphasize enough is to trust your gut. See who and what resonates the most with you. That is going to go so much further than anything else. And another thing that you can do is try a session. I myself offer a free consultation, a free exploratory call that will probably help you to know whether it feels right or not. Some therapists also do that, and sometimes you do have to pay for a single session in order to get a full feeling of what a true session is going to be like. But try it. It's worth it to give it a try and see what feels right. Maybe try a therapist, try a coach, see what works, see if you want to do both. And as I said before, coaching and therapy can truly complement one another. How about you? Have you tried therapy? Have you tried coaching? What has been your experience? What do you see as the main difference between them? Do you have a preference for one or the other? Share in the comments. I'd love to hear. If you'd like to have a free exploratory call with me, there's a link in the description. Feel free to schedule something. I'd love to talk to you and see if coaching and my particular style of coaching is right for you. And if you liked this video, be sure to subscribe, click the like button, click the notification bell so that you don't miss out on future videos that continue to support you in feeling more empowered and stepping on your path to your true nature. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.